Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Welcome to another riveting session titled Systems Engineering for Touring in India and Abroad. Our panel will delve into the role of systems engineering in live events and touring productions, covering key aspects such as design and planning, logistical challenges, integration, and unique demands of touring in India and internationally. I request the panelists to please come forward.
Hi guys, and welcome. I know we are all here for one common thing, are passionate for audio. And this is what we love and this is what we do. And these four fine gentlemen out here on stage are people I've closely worked with. So I've picked them to be on this panel. So maybe the questions are a bit easier. We planned to have a Zoom call and discuss this panel, and it never ended up happening. And they kept asking me, when are we going to do that? I said, we're just going to go on stage and have a good time and talk. So let's kick off with you, Neil. You did Ed Sheeran's tour this year as a marquee tour, as well as you did the independent concert of Dua Lipa. So as an audio systems designer and systems engineer, seeing this renaissance period of tour sound in India, how has it been for you, and what do you want to share with the audience about your experience about these two milestone events?
So my experience with live international touring acts coming to India is it's actually simple doing something like this if you know exactly what you're doing. I mean, these three gentlemen right next to me, amazing designs, amazing system deployments. But I think the one key that really sticks out every time you're dealing with international productions, so you're bridging that gap between the international world and the Indian world. So you're actually bridging the gap between two cultures. So we are creating a culture map at that point. And I think the most important thing that we need to talk about or need to pay attention to at that point is communication. I hope you guys agree with that. Being able to communicate and being able to, I guess, get things done at that point is the key.
Right. And how has been your experience doing an actual tour for the first time, where you were in every version of the tour, city to city? Was it hard acoustically or hard on your mind and your sleep and your body's ability to be present for the next day?
It was extremely hard on my back, for sure. But the fact that we created history together in the country, the fact that we did every city flawlessly based on rules that are set by production, international as well as the local production, making sure that we make everyone else look good as well, making sure that we stick to our guns, making sure that what we came here to do was achieved, was the biggest, I guess, fun bit on
so
all
you're
of these
taking
tours.
is that whatever was on your ArrayCalc file had to translate into a real experience, right?
So how I would put that is whatever was on the ArrayCalc was translated into a virtual play. We reached the venue, and then whatever was in the venue was translated back into ArrayCalc, and then the whole process was, so
back and forth.
Yeah, back and forth. And what we're looking for at that point is precision. So as long as you're precise with designs, now we have amazing companies with amazing softwares to design stuff on, and when we get them precise, deployment becomes very easy, tuning becomes a piece of cake, and you have more time to, I guess, talk to people, communicate, figure out what is required, and that is the fun bit. That is the learning that you get from touring with these big guys.
Awesome. So Rajesh, you started with the biggest gig of the year, Joyjeet Dosanjh in IG Stadium, and you ended up with Guns N' Roses. Tell us about your experience and everything in between.
I think that experience with all these gigs, like starting with Diljit and then doing the Honey Singh tour and then Guns N' Roses, every single day, especially doing a tour, I thought would be difficult, but instead every next city was easier and a more learning experience for me because we had a similar setup, similar set of PA, but different venues, and every city was a different approach in terms of tuning. Like, not approach, but every city you had to then adapt to whatever is happening. And in terms of experience, I think this is the first time I have gone on to do a proper tour, like 2 tours actually. And I had an amazing time, I would say, all this 3 months. Nothing more to explain than that.
So both for you and Neil, obviously this is the first season you'll have both experienced tours rather than one-off shows, right? And how have you felt working in different cities? Has it been far much more challenging in smaller towns than larger metros? How has it been the experience from you, both in production and in tech?
Production-wise, definitely the smaller towns have been challenging because they were not expecting to see a gig of that scale, and hence the time were not met. Like whatever the time was said that the trussing is going to be ready or the power is going to be ready, that was not there on time. So that was the biggest challenge. But otherwise, once everything is up and running, then it was a good.
Joyjeet, you did Bhutan and Shillong. You even backed up the NJSM team when quite a large amount of them fell sick. And because you understand the demographic there much better, tell us about your experience on this particular tour of ED, as well as your experience working in the Northeast, as in parity to you doing, obviously you do gigs in the South, you do gigs in the North, you travel with indie artists, you travel sometimes with Bollywoodified artists. Give us an idea of how it has been for you this season.
I mean, the whole Bhutan and Shillong experiences were amazing because, well, we had a great team for sure. And it was definitely challenging because, working in those extreme conditions where you can't...
What were the temperatures in Bhutan?
Daytime was somewhere about 6 degrees, but with a lot of wind, So it feels like 3. And at night, every morning when we come to the venue, everything has a layer of ice, including the grass, the flight cases, the cable ramps, everything has a layer of ice. So it takes time for the sun to go up, for that to melt, and then that's when you can, start the real work. But in that situation, it's great to have a crew, that backs you up. And one thing as system engineers we should never get out of is we should never stop getting our hands dirty. Just be ready to go out there because there'll always be those 4 people for whatever logistical health problem who will not there be on site. Just be always ready to fill in for those 4 or 5 people who probably are not there for whatever reason. So, I mean, considering...
4 and 5 people not there on site is only an exception in Shillong, but I think sometimes, obviously India is so different. You go to Chennai, it's 41 degrees centigrade.
Exactly.
You go to Bhutan, it's -1. And you're still working with the same crew and the same kit.
Exactly.
And it's just an aircraft flight. In the next 4 hours, you're from -1 degrees to straight 38 degrees centigrade. So, yeah, it's I know it's tough, but how's it been in Indian environment where, you guys are dealing with the environment? Let me ask this question to both you, Joyjeet, and Neil. We've been monitoring humidity and temperature right through the tour, right? What has been your experience on that?
I mean, India being demographically and geographically very vast in terms of what you experience, like you said, 31st December in Chennai is not what people would expect across the rest of the country. A 31st December in Chennai wearing a thin shirt, you would be sweating through your underarms and every parts of your body. And whereas at the same time, you would have to layer up, probably 6 layers up north, anywhere even from Delhi to the northeast. So that's extremely vast when you're, doing tours, which is around the same time of the year, but so varyingly different in terms of the geographic location, in terms of having a coast around, in terms of the wind factor, and definitely the humidity and temperature being the primary factors that affect this whole design and deployment situation. So that's where people like Neil, Rajesh, they come in with their experience of how to deliver consistency. Because like Merline would say, we are the waveform delivery service, and irrespective of
Waveform delivery service. That's nice.
irrespective of what happens, like we are a UPS or a DHL, our clients, the FOH engineers, are sending a consignment, and it's up to us getting it delivered to every member in the audience in the least damaged way possible, with the least amount of alterations. So people don't need to know what goes on behind the whole DHL and a UPS. They just see, okay, we've got our consignment, and that's what we try to do, irrespective of the conditions.
That's good.
Just to add to that, you guys need to realize that India is almost the size of the whole of Europe. We are not a small country. It looks tiny on a map. It really looks tiny on a map when you look at that, but we are not small. So if you look at Europe, excluding Russia, that is the size of India. And we have every type of weather condition going on in this country. So like Joyjeet said, Bhutan, the hottest was 7 degrees, I think, during that week. When we finished our show, it was -2. We can't grab a scaffolding. That's how cold it was. And then we jump into Pune, 38 degrees, 60% humidity. And it just kept changing. We went down to Bangalore with 19% humidity, 35 degrees. And then from Bangalore straight to Shillong, crazy wind conditions. Every evening it was like a cloud descending on the entire PA system. So you walk through that and you're completely drenched. So it's incredible what this country has to offer. And for us to be good at what we do, consistency is what needs to be delivered.
Yeah. So let's take this conversation to Cijith. I think he has done touring before. A lot of guys have actually done touring, and he is systems engineer on the biggest act in this country, Arijit Singh. How have you evolved over the years as the act has evolved?
Well, hello guys, and thank you, Warren, for having us on this panel. So, our band, per se, Arijit Singh Live, has been doing these tours for many years now, and the production have always been demanding and trying to take it to the next level year after year. So in that sense, it's very challenging, and we have to come up with new things always. Like on the past tour, we experimented with the idea of flying subs on delays as well, on all the stacks. And just because of the scale of it, like they don't do any other gigs other than concerts. So we are talking about stadiums and crowds in excess of 20 to 30,000 per gig. So to deliver to that scale is very challenging. And I have to say it's not a one-man job actually. We've been supported by extremely talented engineers like Rajesh and the whole Sound.com team. And the support has been incredible. So yeah, that's what's helped us pull it off actually.
You know, from the time the tour starts with Arijit, the concert production demand increases by 30% by the time the tour is over. So, and that's predominantly in the number of subwoofers, right?
But that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
Like you get to do certain things which otherwise you won't be able to do with other people. So
I think this is one tour probably where the sub to top ratio is 1:2. And the concept that Sunny has when he mixes is a very drone heavy sub driven, and Arijit's voice just layers over it with the instruments. And he'll always keep challenging Cijith to that we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do this next, and then Cijith will come back to our team, and then we go back to think tank and decide how we're going to do it. So it's heavily driven, in this scenario, it is heavily driven by the FOH engineer and what is his vision of how the sound
Quite
should
true.
be designed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how has it been for you and your relationship with Sunny and working with him? And this dynamic you have built with him for nearly, I think, a decade of doing
Yeah.
FOH and monitors as a team. Yeah.
Yeah. So it started, yeah, like close to a decade now. It's been close to a decade. And we've been doing his gigs in India as I was a part of the rental company that time. And then suddenly, out of the blue, they asked if I would be willing to travel with them for their gigs abroad too. And when I started, they used to have a certain problem with international shows because all the shows used to happen in arenas. And it was, it used to be a seated show in the front, like people seated quite close to the stage and everything. They had a particular problem with the subs lined up in before the stage, and people complaining about the huge pounding for 2-3 hours.
The pounding of the subs in the VIP seats.
Yes, absolutely. And fair enough, nobody likes that. So then when I got on board, I proposed an idea of rigging the subs in the air, and which, no, I mean, they had not tried it till then. And we tried that, and it was a huge success. We did not get any complaints for that 18 shows that we did that year. And everybody was happy, and that's how I got on board permanently, I would say. Yeah.
That's good, that's good. So Neil, one thing that I really appreciate about what you do when you're on tour is that you strive for accuracy. And this is something that even we teach at a sound design class, to strive for accuracy. You know, and I've noticed every time you went to the venue, you would check the distances, the elevation again, go back to your Olikal file, let the crew wait, and not put the rig up in the air till you have recalibrated the venue. And only once you updated the file did the rigging happen. And I think that this is, you know, something I really appreciate that you do. So why don't you just tell the audience the whole process and why do you do what you do? Yeah.
So being a systems guy, your process always evolves. So now I'm at a stage where I prefer going for a show with my laser more than my microphone. Because right now, I mean, all the systems that we work with are capable systems. It's just the design that holds you back. And if that design is meant to do and does what it's supposed to do, there's very little that you need to do with your microphone. Right? So you're making processes simpler. You want to do it once, you want to do it right, and technically what the job is, you're making it easier for that guest engineer who's coming in. So normally for me, when a guest engineer comes in, it's a psychological game that you're playing. It's not that technical, honestly. So you want to actually spend some more time with the engineer, getting to know them, rather than them having to fix things that should have been fixed with the design. So that's why I prefer striving for accuracy in terms of design, where then the guys have to rig once. Every one of us, it's always a team effort, like you said, Cijith. It's never that there's one person involved. There's a team. Everyone, you need to identify people for what they're good at, let them do what they're good at, and give them more opportunities to learn from things that, you know, that they're interested in. And the way that works is when you have a sorted design, where you don't have to waste time. Everyone knows exactly what needs to be done. Stuff gets up in the air quicker. The tuning process becomes simpler. And it's just more streamlined. And I always like the fact that you have time to speak to an engineer post that, get to know what he's thinking.
That's important.
Get to know what he's thinking about. Get to know what's in his mindset. Because, see, as system engineers, we don't know. So most of the time, I don't travel with a band. So I spend a lot of time figuring out the psychology of these engineers coming in. He could have had a really bad night. He could have had a late flight. He could have had a fight with his wife the previous night, for all you care, right? And you need to be prepared for this. You need to make sure that he has the least amount of work And you need to just, I guess, make a lot of friends at that point. And that's what makes you grow.
Cool.
I
Yeah,
just
go
want to
ahead.
add to
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
Yeah. So, like you said, gone are the days where we should take our system to the venue and then decide what we have to do. Now the systems have become so evolved and the production timings are so rigid that if you are not up to the mark with your designs and your plan of implementation, you won't be able to complete your job on site. So I would rather, like you said, go to the venue and make sure that because the planning has been done in some other city and it's been given over to 10 different persons who we don't know. So it's better to go on site and make sure that what we planned is correct and let the system do the job rather than us putting it somewhere else and then making the job double for us. Yeah.
Every splay angle matters at that point. So one angle off is one part of your audience. For me, the audience is my client. At the end of it, they are the guys putting bread on my table. So every bit of accuracy that can be achieved needs to be achieved at that point.
So can I say in a brief synopsis about this discussion that we've had, that it's 90% design and 10% recalibration and validation? Yeah? Yeah. So Rajesh, you basically have done so many one-off Bollywoodified shows. You've worked very closely with Indian artists, where the FOH engineer and you have shared a good relationship, and now suddenly you have started migrating to working with international artists. What do you feel the difference? What is the difference that you actually have experienced today working on an international production as against a domestic production as a systems engineer, and the relationship with your relationship with a regional engineer, FOH engineer, and a visiting engineer who you've never met for the first time?
I'll first answer the difference between Bollywood and the international production.
There were two questions in that. Yeah.
The first and the most important difference is the box count, I would say.
Right.
So the box count, the scale of the event, because most Bollywood shows probably are events with not more than 300, 350 feet in terms of venue and also in terms of box count. And it's a very restricted environment, I would say, where it's like, okay, this is what is available and you have to make it work. But when it's working on concerts and international productions like that, it's like, this is the venue, what do you need to make the best out of it, right? So that is one very big difference. In terms of relationship with Bollywood, because I have known all those engineers for some amount of time and I have worked with them also, so I know what they need, right? As there is tuning and there is toning, as we say. So once the tuning is done, most of my job was also toning it for them so that once they come in and load their show file, there's very little that they have to do. But in terms of international...
So when you say toning, you mean the target curve?
Yeah, in a way I can say that it's
something that they like and something
that they like. There are people who do not like any amount of low end coming from the tops, and there are people who like a little bit of HF, a little bit that shelving that probably if I was mixing I would not like it, but that's what the mix engineer likes and that's why you're there, right? And the relationship that I have built with them has given me insight into what they like, and my job, I think, was first make a canvas where everything is as similar to each, as in the venue, as we say that, event distribution and all of that, to get there, and then above that, tone it to the liking so that whatever he intends that his artist should sound like is translated everywhere. So.
And your experience with working with an international act?
Working with an international act for me has been like, we don't know what they want. Like, very frankly, I'll say that I didn't have an idea of what they are looking for or what is their preference in terms of bleed on the stage or in terms of tonality or in terms of power. So I probably try to get as much information as possible through communication in terms of how do they like this design, or is there any specific configuration they prefer or is the artist prefers. And once that communication is done, I think I've tried to reach there to the best of my knowledge and then hand it over to them to, to do what best they always do.
So Joyjeet, you and me have conversations offline, and we discuss about, every time there's a gig, you're fighting for more cabinets. When are you going to win this war?
Before he answers, okay. He is fighting for more cabinets for every gig. And this year, very luckily, it has been like, okay, I reach the venue and I'm like, I think I need 24 more cabinets, 12 on each side. And that has always been just a call away. And I am very happy and fortunate to be in that situation. So I have never had to fight for cabinets this year at least.
Well, congratulations on that, though. But yeah, I mean, in India, fighting for cabinets, it can be a way of looking at things, but then at the end of the day, we are all trying to deliver something. And very honestly, what we do is a subset of an experience design. And we're all, I think, from a marketing perspective, systems engineering could be relabeled as, we design the listening experience for the audience. So probably that way.
Experiential engineer or systems engineer?
Yes, yes. So I think that brings in makes it easier for the marketing people to brand this as a service. So, but yeah, I mean, having said that, that's what we are trying to do, because at the end of the day, our clients are trying to deliver a product. Like for example, this year we were doing this. We are on this tour, which is Sitar for mental health. And
right.
So very often, these conversations begin with the artist as to, hey, what do you want to deliver to the audience as an experience, and how can we?
You're privileged to have that opportunity to even speak to the artist.
Well,
I have not had that.
Well, that's what indie gets you. Where, I mean, it's definitely a privilege to converse with the artist, but also that gives puts a lot of things into perspective, because somebody who's trying to deliver an environment which is sitar for mental health, as opposed to, say, working with Pratik Kuhad, him as how he looks at his brand. So every time there's a new album, the whole branding of that product completely refreshes. So the whole of Instagram account looks new, the way he dresses, his lifestyle choices, the way his public presence is, everything is different, and that's based on the album.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so every time the whole Instagram refreshes, and it's all matching the aesthetic of that particular album. So he's trying to holistically
and
deliver.
And he wants you and Supratik also to adapt?
Well, that's never happening. So, I mean, so artists are trying to deliver, like a holistical product, which is a part of their brand. Like if we look at Apple, they sell the iPhone. The experience of using an iPhone doesn't change irrespective of which country or state we are in. So as a part of the product range that the artist is selling or the talent is selling, concert experience is one of those. And it's our job to translate that to the audience in the most consistent way with the least amount of variance, irrespective of what the conditions are, irrespective of which city or which country are we in. And a lot of times it also, transcends to like what Neil had to do. A lot of times we do get artists or international acts or, they have their own preferences in terms of what product range they would want to use. And that is mostly due to the ideas that has been set in their heads of the experience of using that product range. Say, if I want to use this XYZ brand, I've liked how it works.
Wait, let me intervene. Is this what you're referring to? Pratik wanted to just be on an Avid platform this year?
That was an FOH mixer choice. But I mean, considering the Pratik tour, I think the first Pratik tour that I got on, that was probably like a 15-20 city run, including Southeast Asia, Middle East, India, Nepal, Bhutan. That one tour I remember, and that was probably my second or third ever tour. That one tour had every brand under the sun. Every brand under the sun, like everything from an Adamson, JBL to RCF in Nepal, and DNB, L Acoustic, of course, the usual. So it was our job to translate that whole experience to the audience, irrespective of what the conditions were. And like Neil had to do on the Ed Tour, where, the preference is a particular product range, but the available inventory is something else. And that's where we come in as, bridging the gap between, of course, they're expecting a certain tonality, they're
See
expecting
how
a certain
politically
experience
correct you are. You're not even taking the names of the manufacturers.
Well, public speaking has its caveats. So, in fact, I remember there was one gig I was doing systems for in Southeast Asia. I think it was Malaysia, and it was a Bring Me the Horizon featuring Baby Metal gig, and that's an 8-day touring kit. But they were not traveling with PA for that run, and we, knowing 8, they're all DNB. And I think, if I remember correctly, Grant Copley was the system engineer on that gig. So
8 days also Adamson.
well,
Okay, I'm giving you some intel.
well. Yeah, so probably we should just start taking names. So, Grant Cropley being a all-in-all DNB guy, whereas the rig that we had on site was a K1 rig with K2 outers, and it was a challenging venue because what they did is they emptied a wave pool, a surf pool, and that was the venue. The audience was literally in the pool. So a lot of reflections, whatever. But, having these kind of conversations with whoever the engineer is, whoever the client is, whoever the artist is, based on what are you trying to achieve, it helps us put a lot of things into perspective, knowing that, okay, Grant Copley is a DNB guy and he's getting a K1 rig, which he's going to diss all about. But it was, it's a part of our job to bridge that gap and give him an experience which is similar to what he's expecting.
So, guys, one thing I wanted to chip in is that we all started doing tours like this where we went to different cities, used different consoles, used different sound systems. Then our industry evolved to having different PA systems, but, different PA systems, but you kept, you stuck to one console brand. Unless you went to that one city where you were just not getting any other console and you chose to take whatever you could get out there. Today, I have seen this season where consistency on consoles and PA systems has begun to come into our country, And this has not happened in 25 years of me being in this business. And obviously there are times where you have challenges about, getting the amount of kit that you need. But it's good to see that as time is passing, there is more consistency and homogeneity in both PA systems as well as in consoles. Whereas, anyway, coming back to Cijith, you started as a bass player. You joined SNL Pro, started doing gigs, got into systems, took systems seriously. You have evolved from a Das Aero PA to a K1 PA, then to finally being on the road as a solo flyer and, working with different PA systems. Tell us about this journey and what is your advice to young systems engineers who are basically getting into this field? How should they approach it? Should they be, I only work with this PA system or nothing else? Or, what is your advice to young people? Because you've done the full circle,
Well, it's been a very interesting journey, to say the least. So when I started out, basically, I got in purely by accident. And for my love of music, obviously. But I was on a gig, and very coincidentally, SNL Pro was doing the sound for the gig. And that's where I met my mentor and my very good friend, Alvin Disa, the late Alvin Disa, may his soul rest in peace. So I was very intrigued by all his equipment and what he was doing, and we never sounded that good anytime before. So just out of curiosity, I walked up to him and I asked him what he was doing and like how I could learn all this. So he had a very straight answer. You can't learn it. You have to come and work for it, basically. It's not like I tell you something and you learn it. So that's how I got into it. When I joined SNL Pro, I did not have any knowledge of sound systems, cables, or anything related to it. Then it was a grind, basically, working over long periods and over years, getting to learn how things work and what is the thing that makes it work and everything. So kept working at it, and eventually the company also evolved, and with that we also got a chance to work with better systems and take it up a notch higher, basically. And so the thing is, it's all about your passion, I would say, and how much you want to achieve, or how much are you willing to put into it, basically.
So follow your passion. Right?
Yeah, ultimately, I suppose it boils down to that only, because there are no shortcuts into this. You have to have this thing where you want to understand how things can be bettered, or what is this thing that's not making it sound right, and what you could do to make it right or whatever. So yeah, I suppose you keep working at it and upgrade yourself time to time. That's the key to it, and I'm sure one day you'll be great at it. Yeah.
So Neil, you are applications head for both education as well as applications for India and Africa for DNB. What is it that rental houses basically are not learning that you'll get far much better training from the manufacturer? How do we be able to translate the knowledge on ground to systems engineers and systems tech, what you guys learn from manufacturers?
Well, according to me, 95% of all the work that we do on field is just the basics. Now, concreting those basics are what is actually required, and that's what we go out in the market and do. So if, correct me if I'm wrong, most of you guys are educators as well, right? And what do we concentrate on? The basics. The basics is what takes you that far. Everything else is just, that sugar coating on top that adds to that little bit of, I guess, the essence of what we're doing. Another question for all of you guys. How many of us are failed musicians? Yeah, all of us? So there's a passion for music here, right? It starts there. You need to like what you're doing. Every gig that I'm at, gone are the days when my head that I think to myself, oh, this is the genre of music that I really like, so this is the genre of music that I'm going to do really well. That shouldn't be the case. We have to like everything. We have to find something that we like about it, so that that is what translates into your system. So this is what we're trying to do every time we go train a company, is to, one, make sure that they know their basics, obviously. Number two, get them passionate about something. You have to find what they're passionate about, and then push till they realize that everything is connected to everything else, and at the end of it, they're passionate about everything, right? And I think that is, bottom line, the goal.
Right. Now I'm going to ask Rajesh a tech question. Yeah. You have been, let's say, been an evangelist for end-fired subwoofers, right? And the thing that I like about Rajesh is that, he makes sure you see it.
Obviously, if you're doing it, you should show it.
Yeah. So, how how experimental you are when it comes to do you have you do you experiment this on a big ticket production or you go safe?
If you remember Guns N' Roses
Yeah.
that we did right now, I think the subwoofer config that I did was the first time I did that configuration. So I think that answers
Yeah,
that thing, right?
it answers your question, but the thing was that I thought you did a smaller subset in a smaller gig with a lesser amount of cabinets and you were ready to go in the field. Now that you told me, I'm a little concerned.
But the entire experimentation, right, of all of this, because from where I come into this industry, from my medical background and not having worked in a rental company, I had to spend a lot of time experimenting on Map XT at that point of time. And then I used to speak to vendors around me. Can they provide me 4 subs? Can they provide me 6 subs? And even before anyone knew me in the industry, I had done a lot of experiments in the small town where I was. I would do all sorts of things. And again, end-fired is not something that is new. Like we were at Magoo's training 3 days ago, and he said that it is mentioned in the first mention was in 1979. So as a lot of people say that it's Rajesh Khade end-fired, it's not that. It's something that has been happening for a very long time. And it's just that through all the experimentation that I have done, and it's not, let me clear it now that we are here, it's not my choice of configuration, but the kind of gigs that you do, that is the best option for that particular gig and that venue dimension. And if I have another venue which does not require it, I have done the other configuration.
That's a very good answer, you know.
So,
Because a lot of people need to realize that you just don't go with the same game plan to each and every venue. You look at the venue and then you decide how you're going to deploy the subs. It's a little easier with, you know, mid-high elements. So you can say today they are all called full range elements, where, you know, it's easier to point and shoot them. But when it comes to subwoofers, you got to be really improvising based on the venue, you know.
And also, sorry to cut
Yeah,
you
go
off.
ahead, go ahead.
Also, it's based on the production needs, I would say. So,
Okay.
how much space you can squeeze out for your subs? Is there any space? And how it's gonna translate to the front seats? And a lot of factors based on that is how I think we should configure our sub placements and yeah.
So just one more question. I wouldn't say it's a question, it's an observation that if you see that, you know, all these 4 guys on the panel, what is it that has drawn them to audio is just passion, you know. And I don't know how a doctor convinced his parents that he's going to leave his doctorate and his practice and he's going to end up doing audio. That's something that, you know, says a lot about what we are doing in our industry. So, Joyjeet, now I think you must be the youngest entrant into this systems engineering world.
youngest.
Yeah.
He's not the youngest.
He's not the youngest?
No, he's not. He's more experienced than me for sure.
Then you? Yeah,
Yeah,
you've been
yes.
there before him?
Come on.
Wow, I've got my statistics wrong.
I mean, maybe in terms of age, probably. Is
Okay,
what you're
maybe
trying
in
to say.
terms of age.
But I'm sure, you know, we all of us have collectively at a lot of times together at the same gig experienced a lot of things over the years. But I mean, of course, being young in terms of age does come with its own set of challenges.
People not taking you too seriously when you ask for more cabinets?
Well, I mean, let's not probably get there. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's more like I think what we do as audio engineers is it's like combat sports. We are going to battle. We are definitely going to battle every day. And we got to plan our moves and we got to plan everything. We got to plan for failure and we got to plan for everything that can fail. So there has to be a plan A, B, C, and maybe another set of redundant plan for that. So because everything that can fail will fail. And being probably, like you said, a young systems engineer or an audio engineer does also come with its own sets of pros, which is I do get to learn from the experience of the others that have come before me. So that's a lot of experience to soak in from them. A lot of times I have not had to make the mistakes to learn the right thing to do in a particular situation. So yeah, I mean, as much as it has its own caveats, it definitely does have its own pros as well.
So there have been occasions you have flown subs in your delays. What has been your experience with that?
Uh, Before that, I just want to add to the earlier point that Joyjeet was saying. It's more, like he said, it's not about the age. It's about the exposure, I would say, to good things. Like when I started out, the things it took me a long time to figure out things because there were no people to guide us properly, and there was no good equipment also, I would say, that we could work upon. So for a long time, we were confined in that small world, I would say. So someone who aspires to do it now has a better opportunity and a much wider base of knowledge that he can actually come up with things in a very shorter time that probably took us twice the number of years to figure it out. So it's all about your exposure to good things, where you're working, how your approach to it is, and yeah, that definitely will help. Is what I tried to say.
And remember the question I asked you. Pardon?
We end up being the more tech-savvier ones around.
Yeah. Remember I asked you the question about flown subs and delays.
Yeah. So see, the brief for me for this was basically they wanted to turn the whole venue into a dance floor. So there are multiple ways to approach that. So it again boils down to the same thing that we've been repeating: how comfortable or uncomfortable it would be on the ground, it's so close to the people, and then how easy it is to align also with the frontal systems. When we are talking about subs, you are the vendor for the gig. We are talking about like 12 delay stacks, more than 12 delay stacks with all subs flown on each and every stack. And yeah, so you think about what's the best way to achieve that. And I would say Rajesh also was there. And we pretty much managed to come close to what we wanted to achieve.
So, on the one thing that we've done on Arijit's tour is that I don't think anybody is more further than 250 feet away from any cabinet, right? So it's the whole idea of giving you a near field experience both in full range element as well as in subwoofer element, I'd like to now shift to a topic about signal distribution. And now, Neil, you have worked with AES. You're now going to be on an all Milan platform directly into the amplifier. You've done it via the DS10 or DS20. You have done analog and you have done Dante. Give us a whole idea of now, where do you see this all going?
Well, now, I mean, taking, for example, the tour that we did, now we used Dante. We used the Optico as our transport. Now, with technology going further, we have so many more options, Milan, all of these. Now, these are growing protocols that will overrun our industry when they become a standard. Now, this is just transport for audio, making it so much easier than carrying cables, laying out so many things. So it's just audio over Ethernet, making protocols easier for us to understand, making protocols easier for amps to understand, so that now amps just don't look at a signal coming in. They look at a signal, they look at a channel name, they look at so many more details that you can program the system to do. So The way I see it with, let's say, Milan, the consortium actually becoming as big as it is right now, maturing slowly, yes, it will take some time for, I guess, hardware to reach that software part of it, because software really, really moves quick. But for us to implement the same changes with hardware, it takes a little while. But we're getting there, and I think the quicker we get there, the easier we'd have it.
So if you had to do a tour, what would be your primary network? What would be your secondary network? And if you had a third backup, what would be that?
Right now, with the advantages that I see on Milan would be obviously my primary. So Milan has your primary and your secondary, so you're running with your first level of fallback right there. And then with an analog or a digital fallback going as my tertiary signal so that I have it. And then, guys, remember, you have to match the levels of all these signals.
Oh, that's really important. And you know, this is what I've even advocated on any tour. You start with your analog network, switch to digital, and in that A/B switch, make sure there's no level difference, because that would be a deal breaker if you had to change it in the middle of the show, or it auto switched, right?
Yeah, and that's where technology comes into play. So for example, without Mr. Rajesh's help, Dr. Rajesh's help, on our tour, we wouldn't have figured out that, for example, the products that he deals with does that for you automatically, right? And for us, that was that much time saved on a gig, rather than having to think about that and really putting to test. The first time I listened to it and I was like, I don't hear a difference. I was sold. So yes, we have to look at what is available out there in the market that lets us do these things really easy. It comes at a price point, but that really depends. Now, honestly, it goes all the way back to your fundamentals. If you don't start with the fundamentals like you just mentioned, Warren, so start with the analog, move to digital, make sure that they sound the same, and then, you know, that's what makes it easier.
Yeah. So, Rajesh, you've taken it one step further with now having even with redundancy on processors, because the manufacturer allows you to do that. So tell the audience about this new technology of even having redundancy on processors also.
Redundancy on processors. So every time I talk about my workflow and having a single processor, the first thing anyone comes up and says, what if this fails? And that is something that is relevant with everything, right? What if your console fails? The only way you can have, in spite of having dual power supply and everything, if it fails, you need another one. Exactly. What if your mains fail? What if, you know, all the drivers are gone? You cannot use them, right? You need another set. So if you need a true backup and you are so finicky about what if this fails, then you need another one. Answering that question. And then me doing what we are doing, and especially we have done that for the biggest, we did that for Guns N' Roses, we did that for A.R. Rahman, and when you are doing a gig of that big a scale, and if you have the option to have a redundant processor,
If you have the option, yeah.
if you have the option to have a redundant processor, I don't see any reason to not do it. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So is the primary processor on a digital network and the secondary processor on the analog network? How is it configured?
Okay, so if I want to explain this, so I have two signals coming in from the console, going one to the primary, one to the secondary, and then from the primary console runs the entire digital networking, whatever Dante-based everything, and on the secondary is my fallback, which is analog. So it's like, even if we have redundancy on all, from input to the way the protocol is going, and then because I'm running everything on mirror mode, no matter what changes are done at what point of time during the gig, that is always there on the mirror processor.
So you have to buy an expensive piece of hardware to do that, right?
As Neil said, it all comes with a price, right?
Yeah. True. So we don't have much time, so I'm just going to stop asking questions to the panelists, and let's throw the questions to the audience. Any of you guys have any questions for us? And anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rimaya. I am from Meghalaya. I'm known to Dr. Rajesh, Cijith, and our Honorable Warren, sir. My question is, we haven't discussed much about international thing. So, can you panelists, mostly Dr. Rajesh and everyone of you, including Sir Warren, tell us something about this dry hire concept in America or Europe? Tell us about the production system there, the speed, you know, the punctuality of the people, and the work culture. That is what I want to know, compared to our way of our culture in India. I mean, like, in terms of production and starting the system, right from starting the generator till, you know, it's a sound check and all. Thank you.
So I have to put it to you in a very simple way. In the West, they plan. In India, we improvise. So a lot of productions, things get decided at the last minute, and not because Indian production companies, audio companies want to improvise. It's just sometimes they'll suddenly add a VIP deck. They will start, they'll tell us it's a 500 feet venue, and end up, you come to the site and it's a 600 feet venue. And there are some companies that always, every time they keep changing the venue size, they send you an email. But then sometimes it's too late, the trucks have already left, and then you end up dry hiring from local vendors, right? So in India, the dry hire concept is basically a full service company, like a rental company, just dry hires the gear to you. There is no dedicated dry hire company in India. And a dry hire company, if it had to even begin in India, they cannot get tempted to do full production. So because then you're competing with the people you're dry hiring with. So there may come a time where there will be such a big demand for kit, and somebody who owns the equipment says that I don't want to, I'm not interested in services, I'm only interested in dry hire, is when a dry hire company will form in India. Till then, I don't see a dry. And another problem with dry hire companies is that when you can't just buy 16 boxes and say you're a dry hire company until you don't have over 200 to 300 boxes of that one brand where you can dry hire to 2 or 3 vendors or one vendor on a major production. Only then you should call yourself a dry hire company. You should have at least 4 to 5 console, the same brand of console to be a dry hire company, you know, and you have to have everything. You cannot say that you have a Digico but you don't have an SSL, you know. So you have to be a full service in kit supply, and that's how it'll work. But in India currently, all the dry hire is actually done as a one-off deal with a local rental house. So for example, if we go to Chennai and the layout was for a 400 feet venue, and then they ended up selling more tickets and became 500, and we had to cover the additional 100. So then we just look for who's the rental house that has a cabinet similar to what we have, hire him, dry hire another 12 boxes. They send 2 of their guys or 1 of their guys, and those guys just ensure that the equipment is safe, whereas our guys rig it up and down, and that's about it. Yeah. Anybody with any other questions? We just got 1 minute, so we can take one more question. That's good. I guess we've answered everybody's question. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for coming, and thanks to the 4 panelists. I've had the pleasure with working with them and learn from these guys, follow what they do. They are the future of Tour Sound in this way. And there are a lot of young guys in this audience here too will become, probably next year be on the stage speaking instead of them. Thanks guys, bye.
Thank you so much, Warren.
request Ms. Smita Rai to please give our panelists a token of appreciation. Thank you so much.